Hi, it's Kiffin Lebates here, and this video is a continuation from a previous one where I was talking about hierarchical deterministic wallets. So if you remember that video, then you'll remember that I was talking about how a seed phrase, a collection of 12 seemingly random words, although they are selected from a dictionary of about 2000, are used to create a master password for your digital blockchain wallet. And that wallet can then generate as many Ethereum addresses as you like. Now, an Ethereum address is a bit like a bank account number. There's a standard for it. You have a private key that gives you control over the assets in the account, and there's a public key which is actually transformed into an address that you can then publicize in order to receive assets from other people or even from smart contracts out there. And sometimes you'll hear people talking about how blockchain is like being your own bank. And there is some truth in that saying, because unlike a bank account where you have to go to the bank and ask them to open an account for you, and they'll then assign you a bank account number, in the blockchain world, if it's an open permissionless blockchain that we're dealing with, you can generate your own bank accounts, as it were, your own addresses, and you can make as many of them as you like. And because there can be 2 to the power of 256 different unique addresses on the system, the odds of you ending up with the same bank account number as somebody else on the blockchain system is so close to zero, it might as well be zero. Now, having understood that, I was in conversation with a couple of people over the week and realized that there's a misconception, or rather not a full grasp, of what is going on in Ethereum and the layer 2 solutions. So again, to summarize, layer 2 solutions are side chains, and so layer 2 is not really a good name for them. They're side chains that are kind of clones of the Ethereum system, but because they haven't become as popular as Ethereum, it's cheaper to deploy contracts and engage in transactions on them. Whereas a simple transfer of Ether on the Ethereum blockchain could cost you $15 or $20, if you do it on the layer 2 solution that Polygon provides, it's fractions of a cent. And if you do it on Binance Smart Chain, then maybe it's 2 or 3 cents. And that, of course, makes them very appealing to developers and to companies, because you're not spending vast sums of money engaging in transactions and deploying contracts on the main Ethereum net. That money, or those digital assets in the form of Ether, nowadays just get burnt and therefore effectively increase the value of the remaining Ether, a lot of which is in the hands of very few people. So these side chains are clones of the Ethereum mainnet. If you write a smart contract for Ethereum, then without making any changes, as far as I can tell, you can deploy it on a Binance Smart Chain or on a Polygon Matic chain, and it just works. Now, the fact is, therefore, that Polygon and Binance also use the same addressing system. And this results in an interesting property, namely that when you create an Ethereum address, i.e. you get your wallet to generate a private key for you, and it then derives the public key and then the Ethereum address, that same address works on Binance and works on Matic too. And if you publicize your Ethereum address and somebody decides to send you some Matic tokens on the Polygon network or some Binance coin on the Binance Smart Chain, your account on those chains will actually be credited. Now, you as an inexperienced user may not be aware that these other chains exist, or that you can add them to your digital wallet. Say it's MetaMask, for example. There's a sequence of buttons that you press and click and some data that you need to fill in. Or you can go to chainlist.org and search for the chain and click on the automatically add this chain to my wallet. And your same account that you had on Ethereum with the same string of letters and numbers that identifies it will show up in your wallet as existing on the Binance Smart Chain or the Polygon Matic chain too, and will actually have a balance associated with you. And as a result, it's kind of a bit like the Bitcoin forks, where we had Bitcoin Classic, or Bitcoin Core rather, and then there was a fork and they made Bitcoin Cash, and then Bitcoin Cash was forked to make Bitcoin SV. I'm not going to say what those letters stand for. People who know me well will know why. And as a result, there were 3 Bitcoins. And the fact was that if you had an address on the original Bitcoin chain, you now had an address with the same balance on the Bitcoin Cash and the Bitcoin SV chains, because the same private key creates that address and gives you control over the assets that are in it. And so, kind of in a circular manner, I want to come back to the original thing, which is the difference between blockchain addresses, the account numbers on a blockchain, and a bank, is that the bank creates your bank account for you, whereas you create your own bank account numbers on a particular blockchain. And they're actually, provided the chains are compatible or close to compatible, they're transferable. So you create your one bank account number on one chain, you can carry the same bank account number over to the parallel chains, which are kind of like different branches of different banks. And of course, we don't have that in the real world. If you open a bank account with one bank and they give you a bank account number, you can't go into another bank and say, I want to use this number with you guys too. But in the blockchain world, that is the case. These addresses are transferable, and because you have the private key, as long as the different chains are compatible and use the same addressing system and the same asymmetric key cryptography algorithm for digital signing, then you will have control over assets on all those chains with the same private key and therefore the same public key. I hope that made sense and clarified a few things, and I'll put links to some of the websites I mentioned, for example, chainlist.org, which is very useful because putting in chain details into MetaMask yourself manually is a pain in the neck. It's a lot easier just to click a button and see it happen. And I don't know why more dApps don't actually include buttons on their site or functionality on their sites that actually add the chain for you if you don't have it, and switch to it if you're on the wrong one. Most of them just kind of show you're on the wrong chain. Go and select the correct chain from your wallet. Anyway, I've been going on for far too long for this video, so I'll wrap it up now, and I'll see you in the next one soon. Bye for now.